Hello and good morning everyone. Welcome to our first Supportworks Academy in 2016. Today's webinar will be run by my colleague Alex Trimble, who's a senior application consultant here at Hornbill. Today's webinar will be on Supportworks overview, which Alex will take you through. Just to inform you, delegate audio will be muted during the presentation to facilitate flow and timekeeping. However, please type any questions you might have to the question facility on your right-hand side of the screen. We'll collect the questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for taking time to attend, and now I'll pass you over to Alex.
Well, hello folks, good morning. I hope everyone's enjoying the start of the new year. Already a month down and that's gone so quickly, it's unbelievable. Right, so thanks for joining us today. The session today is around Supportworks overview. What we're hoping to do is just highlight a couple of the areas that we feel might be a little bit underutilised within Supportworks, and indeed how and where we might set these up, and indeed what they do. So it is, I'd say, as an opportunity to refresh your knowledge. I'd presume to think that somewhere along your use of Supportworks you've come across these features, or possibly you haven't come across them at all, and this might be a brand new area of the system that you will be interested in. Just to put it into context, the software versions that we're running here, we're running the ESP, the platform version 8, and ITSM version 4. Now, for anyone that might be on the latest versions of ITSM within the 3.6, 3.6.1 world, everything will seem rather familiar. If we're on some older versions, then some of the stuff I might be showing you here, you may not have access to. To get a breakdown of what you do have compared to what I'll be showing here, if there's certain elements that you're looking at that you think you don't have, you can certainly contact the support team or go onto the community.hornbill.com website and find out through all the release notes and feature lists and matrix that are up there to see what you've got. So we're going to be looking at these topics: database searches, my library, etc. At the end of the session, there'll be a period of time for you to pose any questions that you may want to ask. Now, there's quite a lot of stuff here to cover in the amount of time we have. We've got about 40-ish minutes, 45 minutes up to an hour. So we are going to be powering through this quite quickly. The recording of this session is going to be made available to anyone that might want it. And indeed, if there's any further information that you want on any of these topics, community.hornbill.com is your friend. There's a bunch of information up there that's very useful. So I'm going to crash out of the PowerPoint for now. The majority of this is going to be show and tell, so I'm going to be opening up Supportworks. As we can see here. So again, just to have a quick look at this, we are running on the API version 8, and it is indeed the ITSM version 4. So to start off with, looking down that list, we're going to be looking at database searches. This is a feature that's available in all Supportworks versions I've ever come across, and I've been here for a bit of time. What this allows us to do, if it's enabled, we can turn it off from this server configuration. What it allows us to do is to go ahead and create a bunch of SQL queries that directly talk to our database. So I'm able in here to go and select all the details from my open call field relating to the calls that are open. What I'll do, just to make it a bit more readable, is drop our call reference in. And a call class, why not? And we can give it a name. And we can say whether this particular query is going to be available from our search option, just up here. So once that's created, I am able to go and run this, and it gives me the output. Brilliant. So calls down here on classes, these classes are calls. Now within this database searches area, we are able, so long as your analyst has got the specific rights, to export this set of data. Nice and easy to export it. Various formats are available to us, from XML, HTML, CSV, all this sort of good stuff. And this is a nice easy way to get data out of the system so that we can go and put it into Excel, put it into other systems, whatever it is we might want to do. It's entirely up to us. So it is all permissions based. And this then will go and create a test.csv with that data in it, already available for us to go and do other things with it should we so require. So some scary elements to notice about database searches. Again, depending on our analyst settings, this particular query I've chosen to select. The database doesn't care what command we give it. We can update, we can insert, we can delete, we can drop, we can truncate. So if we have given this option to people, make sure that we understand the implications on the security profiles. Some system privileges. We'll find down here the option to be able to create and edit custom searches. Custom searches are database searches. If we can create and edit, and if we have got the ability to delete and drop and truncate, then we can do that. Nothing's going to stop anyone coming in and delete all my calls from my database, please. So it is a bit scary. It's very useful. Limited people can have access to this. Limited people can create them. Once they're shared, other people are able to come down and use them from the search option. It's a very useful direct integration to the primary SW data database tables. Can be useful, can be a little bit scary, so caution is advised. Because in my library, again, it's a legacy feature. It's been around the system forever. What it gives us is access to network documents and network resources that might relate to me or my group. So if I come on to my library, I'll see that I've got my personal library. In there, I'm logged in as admin. I've got some admin notes, and I've got some details here around my database structure. In my teams library, this is everyone that's in the support team. There's a support team processes.doc. Great, and there's some good advice in here. But whatever the information is, we can make the information available and provide it distinctly to the team, or indeed out individually. Now the analyst, again, if they have got the requisite permissions, they're able to go and create, yeah, so take a break, do not work all day, brilliant. So the analyst is also able to create web resources, preferably not out to Facebook and the like, but you know, it's a working day, we need to have a bit of downtime. Something up to Dell, whatever it is, your internal intranet, whatever the web resources may be. What this enables us is for our analysts to not have to leave the Supportworks shell, the Supportworks hub, to go and have access to all their web or document resources. Now these are all set up and configured bespoke for each analyst. So on administration, properties, library resources, these are the resources and available areas that's available for me. For other people, it'll be different paths. So we can go and create the paths, we can go and define where these are within our network, we can add appropriate information into those paths so that the analyst has got access to it. Ideally, of course, to help them with their job to resolve issues quicker for a customer base. Okay, so impact matrix. Now this is something which is related to problem and known error management. The idea of this is we might log our problem and we might assess its impact as being low, medium, high, extreme, whatever it is that we've defined against our impact settings. Within manage settings, we'll go into our general settings area, and there's a bunch of stuff we've got available to us in here. Our impact matrix will allow us, let me just drop this down momentarily, will allow us to go and add criteria for our impacts. So I haven't mapped none, because if there is none, then there is no high or lower limit. Now what this is trying to tell us is, go and have a look at the number of people that will be impacted by this problem or known error. If that number of people, through associations from other incidents or however else we modify the impact of problems, if that number of people starts to escalate higher than 2, the system will let us know that the impact level should be medium. Do we want to change that? If we then go and add the impact greater than 4, so into 5, the system will let us know that we think the impact here should be set to high. So you can control this, you control the lower limits and the upper limits. You don't need to, but it can be a nice way. Again, when it comes to problem management, it's difficult for each analyst, certainly newbies around, to know what the impact of these problems and such like should be. So I've got my problem down here. And the associated information around here, I've got a couple of associated incidents. This one's logged for Mary, this one's logged for Bob. Grand. Number of affected customers is 3, so we know that the impact there should be medium based upon our impact matrix. So when I come through and associate another couple of calls for different people, and here's one down here for Abdi, one for Paul. Brilliant. Because we've got a setting, because there's me that's on the call, and there's now 4 additional other people, that makes 5. Our impact matrix has said that if it's 5, it should be resolved as high. Do I want to? Yes, I do, because that's what our business process is telling us. Impact is now high, so we can then work through the processes involved in a high impact problem. So time periods again, this is something that we can set up. A lot of this is all administration stuff. The time periods allow us to create a set of, well, as it clearly says, time periods. These can be used to specify certain functionality within other entities in Supportworks, such as contract reviews or SLA reviews. What we don't want to have to do on each SLA is say the review period for this is, now let me remember those dates. When does Q1 start? When does Q2 start? When does the enrollment date start? So we don't need to remember these. We can set them once and then reuse them. And of course, we can then go and change the criteria once within the time period, and that will filter through to all of the associated entities that use that time period. So we are going to be looking at our self-service, sorry, no, that's our escalation emails. So we're back into our file manage settings, general settings. In here we have our time periods. I've set up a few. Obvious ones will be quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. I've also set up something for an academic enrollment period between August 1st and September 1st. So we can go and define these for ourselves. There can be as many of them as we care to create, and they can reflect anything that has some sort of notation of differences or period specifications within our business. Depending on what it is we support, we may have various ones. The Q1, 2, 3, and 4 seems to be rather obvious. So the way this will be associated will be in areas such as SLAs. On my incident SLA, I've got a bunch of review periods. This one's just a Q1 review. So on every Q1, the first day of the Q1 review, so that's pretty much going to be the 1st of January, this is going to specify to us that it's going to send an email out to the IT owner. It's going to be using this email template, and all I've had to do is select this particular period. I can quite have, rather than having to define it each and every time for every SLA that I want to set one up for. So when it does come to that date, when we set this up, the system will be able to calculate for itself when the next review is. And there it is, 2007, 1st, 2nd of January 2017. Other areas where this is used as well will be on contracts. So if we go and have a look at one of our organisations, I've only got 2. Then a contract down here, I've got a gold contract. This one as well, we review this. We're going to review this every quarter. The next time this wants to be reviewed, because we've already set up the Q2 periods, the system knows that the next time it's going to be reviewed is the 2nd of April. So again, it just gives us a chance to come through, modify these values in one place and let them be utilised in different areas. Invariably, it's all around the reviews. Now, of course, when we do set reviews up, there's other settings around the system to say, I do want you to go and email these owners and these sponsors and let us know. It's the whole maintenance element of the data that's put in there. It's good to put it in once, but we do need to maintain it, otherwise it might get out of date. These are just simple ways to remind us that we need to keep on top of the data that we support. So time periods is one of the options we got within the system settings. So within the general settings area of the system. Now, any reasonably modern ITSM will have our system settings, and there'll be fewer or more of these depending on your version. There'll never be fewer going forward. There will always be more. So the idea of these is that we're trying to get a lot of the data dictionary settings associated to the database so that we can quite happily go and upgrade our systems and it will continue to remember the settings that we've associated for it. So things like down here. We can tell the system in here to go and automatically resolve my closed incidents after 3 days. So I set my incident to be resolved. I'd kind of expect then my customer to come back to me to say, yeah, that's great, thank you very much. That hardly ever happens. What they may come back and say, no, that hasn't fixed my problem. So that's fine. If we don't hear anything from them, the system will wait 3 days for a resolved call, then to go and close it. Now for change requests, 3 days might be a little bit short, because there might be a bunch of UAT and whatever else, so we're going to say up here 10 days for change requests. Brilliant. So we can specify out. Again, from down here, are we going to use CI assessment levels on incidents or known errors or problems? Now, CI assessment levels, as we all know, is the ability to define a priority and SLA based upon the associated CIs to that call. Whew. Now, there are a few SLAs and a few ways to manage and maintain SLAs. This is but one, but it's things like this that we can control from the system settings. There's a whole bunch of stuff. If we've got any CI connectors connecting out to SCCM or Snow or Landesk, whatever it might be, we'll set them up here. What are the fields we go through? We use to connect back to that database, and where are the files? When we're coming down on multiple data dictionaries, we're able to define which data is shared between this current data dictionary and another one. So we may have ITSM and we may have ITSM2. We'd be able to come into these sort of areas and say, you see my business processes, I want to share all business processes that relate to ITSM and relate to ITSM2. So we can quite happily share our data between applications. And this is split out between service levels, OLAs, knowledge base articles, SLAs, business processes, a bunch of stuff. There are quite a few of these, and as I say, they are increasingly growing. CCP, again, the community.hornbill.com is your friend to find out what all of these are. One thing to bear in mind, though, that all of these settings are stored in the session. So when we make changes in this area, they won't be reflected until such time as we come into the system and refresh the data dictionary, or of course log out and log back in. Once we've done that, and indeed every analyst would need to do that for them to pick up these changes. Once we've done that, and those changes will be stored in session, the system will know what to do about them. Okay, so moving on into change assessment. This is a reasonably new area of the system. The impact level assessment has been available for a little while. We now have a change and release risk assessment. So it's the same sort of processes. If we're familiar with impact level assessment, then we should be rather familiar with change and release assessment. So out of the box, I believe this default set of criteria and options has been defined. So what we're saying here is the criteria that we're going to measure our impact on is going to be complexity, system impact, severity, and users affected. This criteria can be anything of your devising. The options will be saying on complexity, for example, we're saying change cannot be backed out, or validation is based on usage. That's going to have a weighting of 4. We'd assume that the complexity that is easily validated and backed out will have a lesser weighting. So it's got a weighting of 1. Based upon all these options, and indeed these options, we can create these willy-nilly, as many as we like. Based upon this criteria, we're going to add in a new option and we're going to give it a weighting. So what this then enables, and we'll have a quick look on the change form in a short while, is when we are logging the call, or potentially based on our system settings, once it has been logged, we're able to assess the impact based upon this criteria. So as opposed to saying the impact is low, medium, high, urgent, whatever it might be, which is a little bit lacking of detail, we're able to come down here and say the reason we have this impact is because I've selected complexity this, system impact that, severity that, etc., etc. Now the way the system works, it will add up these numbers. So 4 and 2, 6 and 2, 8 and 2, 10. That would give us a impact of medium. So again, it's based upon count these numbers. When we count these numbers, what's the impact? We're going to specify it based upon the sum or the range that we set up. And again, you set this range up. So we could have none is a lower limit of 4 to 4. Low could be 5 to 14, 14 to 15, 15 to 16, etc. Entirely up to you. Likewise, exactly the same with the risk management. We create the criteria, we create the options and the weighting for each of our criteria, and we make a range to suggest my risk is going to be these based upon the selected options. So it's system settings down here that will control whether we use these risk and impact level assessments. If we do use them, and I've told the system that I want to use both, I've told the system I can change it once it's logged, but I've also told the system it is not mandatory. So down here, I'm going to have high complexity, high system impact, high severity, and high users affected. So we know, as we saw, that changes the impact to critical. Likewise on the risk. Maybe I've told the system that I don't want to use risk. I need to go and check my system settings. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it's just don't know why that didn't pop up. So again, from risk expected downtime, quite a lot. The resources, we are going to greater than 2, and rollback is going to take a long time. So this is going to be a rather risky project. And that's going to put our risk level in there for high. So rather than us manually select maybe high, low, it just gives us more granularity to be able to base this upon. So it will come through and log a change here. It's going to be useful for us in a short moment. And for this particular change, I'm going to associate an email service, only because I've got some things set up around the email service. Now you can, of course, as well, you notice that the priority here, I selected this. Standard functionality around SLAs can tell it to use the impact and urgency matrix. So as long as we had that set up on the RFC SLA, so that critical and low might beget a priority, then that would pre-populate itself based upon the selection of impact. We'd manually choose the urgency. Okay, so we'll leave this call number 35 sitting down there for a moment. Okay, so self-service links, just going down the list as we have it presented out to us. Self-service links, we are talking here about our self-service, clearly. Let me just go and open up my self-service. Okay, good. Okay, so this is reasonably out of the box. There aren't very many changes that are made to this. The self-service links, mind you, enables us to add additional links down here without needing to get our hands dirty with any code. So these links that we'll find, they're once again in our managed settings, general settings area, and we're going to have a self-service links tab just over here. So I've decided to add a link through to our Supportworks homepage. It's going to be of type URL. It's going to be called More About Supportworks. When clicking it, it's going to link through to this link. So More About Supportworks, supportworks.com. Brilliant. This other one is in fact just some HTML that I've chosen to create. Very simple table. It's just going to have a couple of links back out to Dell over here and back out to Wikipedia. But as you could imagine, HTML, we can do a bunch with that. It's entirely up to us. You can make this as complex or difficult or easy and clean as you so choose. So within this area over here, when I choose for my additional help, I put no formatting on this. We can do formatting and get pictures, make it lovely and pretty. But from here, I'm going to find out more about my laptop. That's going to go and open the Dell homepage. So this sort of stuff we can again link through to intranet. We can do whatever we might need to. If we've got some other resources around here, other tool sets, anything that's actually going to help us or help our customers, if you have distinct knowledge bases, links into SharePoint, this sort of stuff, anything that we might care to make available to our customers, we can add them in easily in the self-service links without having to get our hands dirty with code. Okay, so feeding back a little bit to that call that I just logged, the change request number 35, we're moving now on to affected business areas. Now again, this has been in the ITSM application for a good couple of years now, so the majority of us should have access to this. So an affected business area, I would describe it as a logical group of interested parties. So I decided to create just three up in here: security, server team and continuity. So the way this invariably gets used will be against our CIs we can associate the affected business areas, and it's all related around the change process, and it all gets tied into authorization processes. So we might say on certain services or servers or CIs of any description, asset-based CIs of any description, we might say that if there's a change related to this, then yeah, the item itself, the service or the CI, it's got an owner, it's got a business owner and technical owner, but you know what? There's a bunch of other people that would have a pertinent viewpoint and give us some sort of pre-authorization mark to say whether they're happy with this sort of change to affect the item that they are in some way associated to. So the way we'll set that up against our items, let's go and have a quick look within our CMDB. So I've got an Exchange server over here. People that are impacted by that to be our server team. Brilliant. Based on our server, mind you, we've got the email service as a parent. Now, affected business areas of this service would be security, continuity, and indeed the server team, because if we're going to be changing this service, we're probably going to be affecting the hardware that lies underneath it, which means our server team is probably going to care. And as it's a service, security will want to know, and indeed continuity will want to know, because what are we going to do if this service is changed? How is that going to impact us? So we logged a call a little while ago. call reference 35 it was. Before we get down there, let's have a look at the business process that this is running. So here's my change request, newer 35. We can see that we're using the change request process. Grand. Let's very quickly look at our change request process. Okay, so on my authorization stage, now this is a standard ITIL v3 process, so we should all be reasonably familiar with that. It's a little bit bureaucratic, but we can drive through it quite quickly should we wish to. So authorizations, grand. So we've got standard authorizations in here, add administrator. When we get to the authorization stage, administrator is going to be associated to this as a authorizer, as is our affected business areas. There's something to note about this. Affected business areas, as I've associated my email service, I've got 3 ABAs associated to that one service. If we have a weighting, then the weighting gets divided by the number of ABAs, and each of them gets an equal saying. So in this instance, when we log this call and the affected business areas are set up to provide authorization, each one of them will have a weighting of 34. It rounds up. It does tell us here, but it's just worth mentioning that. Something else to have a quick look at whilst we're around this. We've got conditional authorizations and indeed conditional tasks. So I've set a couple of these up over here. I've set up to say that if the call that is logged, this change, is affecting the site called Ares, then I actually want this analyst, an Ares analyst, to be set up as the authorizer as well as the ABAs. If the site is Apollo, based upon this condition down here, new own call site equals Apollo, I'll set the authorizer up to only be the Apollo analyst. Fine. If it's neither Ares or Apollo, then it will use the default authorization that's set up on the process, which will go and set up the administrator and our ABAs. Great. So let's go see how that all works then. So within our change call, number 35, we've got this open down here. Now we know, or I know at least, that this is set up to Ares. So when we come to the authorization stage, I would expect there to be the Ares administrator, sorry, the Ares analyst as an authorizer. Now this picked up as default because in this particular change, I did associate a customer. Usually speaking, where there wouldn't necessarily be customers associated to it, but that's fine because the settings, we can modify that anyway, and we can change this. We don't need customers down here to have to select organizations and sites, etc. Now indeed, as I've also associated my service, email service, we know that this has got these 3 ABAs associated to it. So when we come to the authorization stage, I'd expect to see the Ares analyst as well as our ABAs. Let's go and accept this then. And we'll push it through for authorization. Good. It's Ares and our authorizers. So running through that again, just to make sure, just to see that it does actually make a difference. So all that we're going to do now is log another change, but we're not going to associate that CI, the service, and we're not going to have any customer. So this site will not be either Ares or Apollo. We're still going to use the same change process. I'm not going to bother setting up the impact and assessments just because it kind of takes a bit of time, and goodness me, it's going already. Okay, so if we just log and accept this, yes, I do want to open the details, thank you. I'll push the process on to get to an authorization stage. And in here, I'd expect there to only be our admin authorizer because nothing else is set up. And there it is. So we've set this up all on the business process. The analysts are nothing about it. We can define based upon the associated CI who would be the expected authorizers on the affected business areas, and indeed, depending on criteria of the call, what site is this related to, we can distinct out individual authorizers that might relate to that site's change authorization process. Okay, so there is a note in here about CI relationship types and color codes. There's a smaller topic, if you will, than ABAs, and indeed a smaller topic than availability settings, so I'll just buzz through this quite quickly. We've got relationship types that we can associate to CIs and services. So on our categories, on the first page of categories, we can create our relationship types. This can be anything in your language, in your world, that describes how any one item is related to another, is installed on, is owned by, operates with, works with, is a redundant link to. Anything that might describe how you want to relate to your CIs. Now, of course, bearing in mind, you don't have to relate your CIs if you don't want to. You don't have to build parent or child relationships. If you do, then it will require that you create a relationship type. That relationship type will be one of these. And they will have some sort of line style and some sort of color. Now this will help in the visual configuration so that we might hopefully be able to use a color coding system to understand the relationship. Application is installed on this, server is provided resources by that. Likewise with the service, we'll have a quick look at our service categories. We've got our relationship types again down here, so let's go and have a look at our technical services. I've decided to only have is supported by as a relationship type. I'd go and add new relationships down on here. Is a component of, why not? So the way this then works itself into something that's useful for us is when we come down to our configuration database. Let's have a look at our Exchange. Now we know that this Exchange server is associated to a parent of the email service. So I'm then able to go and view my parent dependencies. And we can see down here, or you may be able to see down here, that there's a slight difference in the color coding of our relationships here. This will give us our key of what these are related to, and we'll start to be able to show us the impact. So when I come and say on my email service, I want to show my downstream impact. So if my email service is affected, what else is? Clearly it's just the server. If on the other hand, I want to go and show upstream impact of my server, it could be affecting people at Ares, my organization, and indeed the email service. So the relationship types allow the VCM to be drawn, the color coding around it. The intention there is to give us some visual identification of the type of the relationship. Okay, so CI availability settings. Right. So there's quite a lot involved here, but I will buzz through, hopefully not too quickly. So what we're saying here is services and CIs can be monitored for availability. What we can see from the, let me close this down. What we can see from the Supportworks Today page is I've set availability up on my email service and my email server. Now I can see this as an analyst when I log into the system. And indeed, when I log into the self-service, I can also see my notifications. Server and email are up and running, ground. Chances are you probably wouldn't have hardware described out to the customer base. I've just chosen to do so as a demo. So when we come into our service, let's go and have a look how this is all set up. Here's my email service. I have a child dependency onto my email server. Brilliant. I've marked this service so it can be monitored for availability. When we do that, we see this availability tab. In the tab on our notification settings, we're telling the system on the Supportworks Today, so for analysts, when I am running normally, or when I'm impacted, I'm faulty, or when I'm deactivated, I want you to display this message. Likewise for self-service, do I want to make notifications available? And if so, what is the text going to say, depending on the status of my CI? So availability is all managed via the status, operational status down here. So the idea would be we might get alerted that the email service is down or impacted. We may have some contract with our business to say that between these operational hours of 8:30 and 6, Monday through Friday, we'll guarantee that we've got 4 nines availability uptime of this particular service. So what's that? A couple of minutes per month. We're able to come down in here and start to say things like, this service was unavailable on this date. We did manage to resolve it at this date, and let's say it's now been resolved. Grand. We can add this to history. We can give it a title. Outage. We can put problem profiles, request call references, all that sort of good stuff against it should we so care to, and indeed resolution details, hopefully something a little bit better than fixed itself. Fine. Now we can add that. So the system there is going to calculate operational downtime was 9.5 hours. Total downtime was 24 hours. Eesh. Okay, we're not going to meet our SLA today. Fine. So other things around availability. We've seen the availability settings, fine. So from here we can start to get good indication of how well we're meeting our distinct operational hour SLAs for each service that we support. And we've got some reports and good extra stuff that we can calculate based upon this. Notification settings, who do we tell? And if they're down, what do we describe? Event handling. So event handling, I could talk about half a day for event handling, so I will be very quick here. I've decided to here tell the system if the status of any of my child items change. If my child item status gets changed to impacted, and if that child item happens to be my Exchange server, then I want you to set my status to faulty and diarize this action and log an incident to these guys here using these criteria and send emails around. So we might have some sort of SolarWinds, some systems monitor, something like this that might say, goodness me, Exchange server seems a bit impacted, it's running out of RAM. It might send an email to Supportworks, and we've got internal autoresponder processes that can pick that up. It can find the affected item. In this instance, it will be Exchange server 01, and it can go and modify the status of that item. Upon the status of my child, that's then going to affect my parent. So let's go and find our Exchange, this one here. Now this can happen manually as well. Again, from here, I've decided that this item can be monitored for availability as well. And this is decided on the type level rather than the individual item level. So from here, I'm actually going to change my status here to impacted. Do I want to modify the availability settings? Yes, I do. Now, I'm not actually going to fill in any of the availability settings down here. All I'm just going to do is save that change. So this could have been automated from an email or indeed manually set by an analyst. What that means on this side though, Supportworks Today side, is my service is now currently experiencing problems as well. All I've done is change my server. I would also find out down here within my call queue, my hardware analyst is the guy that should have been reported about this, so we have gone down and logged a call from my hardware analyst. We have associated that service to it already. So hopefully this guy is looking at this and he knows what to do. And we've had absolute minimum interruption or integration to the system there. This could have indeed all been kicked off from a inbound email. Likewise on our self-service, want to log in again. We can see that this service is faulty, so arguably if our customers try to contact us to say my email doesn't work, they might notice this, and they might then potentially leave us alone to get on and fix it. So there's a bunch of other stuff you can do with the availability settings, primarily around the event monitoring, event capturing, and it can get from doing nothing up to doing a great amount of good functionality. Of course, we need to set it in there, and indeed mainly we need to remember what it is we set up and maintain it. Okay, so the final area, and I think we're just about in time for that we were due to talk about today, is email escalations. So email escalations relate to placing a call on hold and what the system's going to do whilst it is on hold. So what we'll find is within our service level agreements, we're going to find some escalation email tab. Now out of the box, there's going to be some set up to give us an idea. Now there's a lot of stuff you can do here, and it does, in fairness, get a little bit technical. You do need to understand what we're on about by joining fields that we resolve in this table onto fields that we're resolving in this table. So it can be a little bit daunting, but with the out-of-the-box options, and indeed the description thereof, identifies the customer of the email. So we can go and set these up. Now what we're able to do with this is collect a value from the affected call, and we can use that value to go and resolve other values from other tables, either a single value or a multiple value. What we'd expect to be doing here is ultimately collecting an email address or email addresses. So I've created one down here for CI owners. Now what this should do is use the Common Rel Open Call CI table. Based upon the call ref of that table, we're going to get the ID of the items that are affected to the call or associated to the call. And we're going to join that onto our config item I table into our PK auto ID is going to match with the auto ID of the CI. And in description, I'm going to assume we have an email address in there. So what this would do is specify that we will go and find all of the email addresses that are related to all of the CIs that are related to this call. And we're going to send them an email. So there is a good amount of functionality you can do here. It is a little bit technical. So what we're going to do on our on-hold notifications, I've created one down here, 3 days on-hold notification, fine. So what this is saying to us, and this is related to the email escalation emails, we're saying that when I put my call on hold, I'm going to give it a 3-day countdown. And on the first day, after 1 day, if our customer hasn't got back to us, I'm going to tell the system, just move this out of the way, I'm going to, so 1 day from the start, so I've gone on hold, 1 day later, the system's going to come down and it's going to just send an email out to my customer. Fine. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. So that email template that we describe, it would be saying along the lines of, oh, hi customer, please get back to us. We're going to do something if you don't within 3 days. The things we can do is reassign the call back to the original owner or resolve it, or a few other good things that we can set up. Once we've got 1 day before the 3 days is up, we're actually going to use this CI owners email escalation rule that I've got set up to go and find all the emails of all the owners of the CIs and send them an email. So we can cut and slice that in many ways. There's lots of things that we can do there. System settings will again define whether we have the on-hold notifications available to us. So if I go and have a look at this call, I'll just accept it briefly. I'm not going to send an email. And then when I go to place this on hold, I'm going to on hold for as long as I might care to. I'm going to specify the on hold period as my 3-day one. Now in 1 day's time, the customer's going to get an email to say, hello, come on, we're waiting for you. In 2 days' time, all of the associated CI owners will get an email to say whatever it is we've described in the email template. So a little bit technical, but greatly functional. Oftentimes we would have had to go and create bespoke VPME scripts or other customizations to manage this fairly simplistic level of notification via email. Now the system allows us to do it itself. So I feel as though we've been talking for a great amount of time. We have got down to the bottom of the list. I do appreciate it's gone rather quickly and swiftly. I'll hold it there and open the forum up to anyone that may have any questions. So we've got a question here from Mike. Thanks, Mike. Are we able to use buffers in the searches? I'd like to be able to link incidents and reports on the linked problems and its status. Are we able to use buffers in the searches, database searches? So not too sure what you mean about buffers. However, we can certainly, within the database searches area, you can certainly join tables. That's no problem. So we can join OpenCall onto Common Rel OpenCall OC. From there, we'll be able to see which other call references are joined to our primary table, and indeed go and cast other queries. Something that we're not able to do, though, is select OpenCall or select a.callref, b.callref from OpenCall A, OpenCall B. Sorry to be quite technical there. We can't do that. The system will see that there's a table it's trying to find there called a.opencall. It will not be there because it's just a different alias for our table, so we can't cast alias names in those search areas. So if that's what we're on about, then no, we can't. If you're on about something different, I apologise for not getting the gist. Send me a mail afterwards and we'll see if we can sort that out for you. Jane has come in as well. Hello, Jane. How are you? On this version, does the Supportworks homepage and the change schedule refresh automatically with how to log out and in again? Supportworks homepage, I assume we're talking around the Supportworks Today page. Short answer, no. It's a web page. We will need an F5 to refresh it. There are elements within the page here where when we do go through to force a HTTP refresh, it would or could affect this and affect this and affect any other pages such as dashboard and trending as well. So it is all a manual refresh required in those pages. In from Tony. Hello, Tony. Can we please go through setting up the reporting categories again? So can we please quickly go through setting up the reporting categories again? Sorry, can you describe again what you mean by the reporting categories? Okay, not too sure about that, Tony. What I'd suggest, I'll give you a wee tinkle after the session here to find out what it is we're on about, and I'm more than happy to give a quick one-to-one around that to help you get going on it. So unfortunately, sorry, I'm not quite sure what you mean by the reporting categories there, because I don't suppose you're on about reports. But certainly, Tony, I'll give you a tinkle after the session here and we'll get on and see what how it can help further. Okay, so if that's it from everyone, I'll thank you all very much for your time. I hope it's been somewhere useful. I know we did flash through fairly quickly. Community.hornbill.com is our friend for that. Further training and education resources can be found at support-works.com. There's a bunch of professional services we can offer out to guys, get you up and running, detailed information, or anything else in between. So thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Alex, for taking us through the presentation and overview of Supportworks. I hope everyone found it useful. As Alex mentioned, please do get in touch if you have any further questions. The recording of this session will be made available, and I'll be sending out the email with a link to the recording shortly. Please do not forget about our webinar center, where you can find information and register for next upcoming webinars. So hope to see you at our next webinars, and have a lovely day. Thank you.